foreigner in her own country. That's how Elisa Meissner feels. Her family used to live in a spacious apartment in Moscow in the 1930s. Then came the Second World War, and the Soviet government began deporting what it labelled dangerous elements from the capital. Joseph Stalin branded all Germans living in Russia traitors to their country. Elisa's mother was German and was deported to a so-called special settlement in the northern taiga, in Siberia.
All of my mother's family was forcibly resettled because of their ethnicity. Like a handful of peas, they were strewn across the country.
Elisa was born in the remote settlement. Her family was forced to stay there for decades and worked like almost all deportees, felling trees. The Meissners had it harder, though. As ethnic Germans, they weren't accepted by their Russian neighbours.
The very same people we lived side by side with, walked the same roads, went to school or the club with. These people bullied and harassed us. That hurt.
It wasn't until the 1990s that the Meissners were allowed to leave, along with hundreds of thousands of other political prisoners and deportees. At the time, many Volga Germans emigrated to Germany, but Elisa Meissner had no relatives in the West and didn't speak German. So she stayed on in her home region, in Rudničny, a small town about 70 kilometers from the settlement where her parents had been sent. But in recent years, Rudničny has been shrinking rapidly.
We used to have a bus here, not anymore. Now if someone has to go to the hospital in the nearest city, they risk not making it at all. This summer the roads were so bad and the drive lasted so long that one of our neighbours died on the way to the doctors.
Elisa Meissner could have moved to Moscow long ago. The city her family was once forced to leave. It was guaranteed under Russian law, and the apartment too, in theory. But in practice, the authorities refused that part. Elisa Meissner is still fighting for her right to move into the old family home in the city. Until recently, the human rights organization Memorial was trying to help her and many other victims of the Stalin regime. Memorial researched the family's original living situation. Here, a member of the group looks at the apartment.
Compare this with their life in the special settlement. I could imagine the people must live there with a kind of hopelessness. They can't get out, surrounded by thick forest and wolves. It's very hard to compare that with life in Moscow.
Many former deportees face similar situations. About 1,500 are still waiting to return to their ancestors' homes.
I'm afraid these so-called children of the Gulag no longer have any priority with the authorities. The Russian state would much rather talk about victories, the highlights of history, not the dark sides of the Soviet Union. Otherwise, they would have to talk about their responsibility.
Now Elisa Meissner is losing this valuable support. The Russian authorities have accused Memorial of acting as what they call a foreign agent, saying the organization included Nazi collaborators on its list of victims of Soviet repression, and crucially, that it criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Unfortunately, Memorial has demonstratively broken certain regulations multiple times, and so Memorial will bear full responsibility.
Memorial has categorically denied these accusations. Even so, the Supreme Court of Russia has ordered the closure of the country's best-known non-governmental organization. Memorial has been dissolved. Elisa Meissner sees it as a slap in the face, not only to her, but to millions of other victims of Stalinist repression and their descendants. No other organization has stood up for their rights with as much determination.
I think Memorial's doing something good. The staff there are not only helping us, but many other people as well. I think what's being done to this organization is a terrible injustice.
Nearly every family in Russia suffered in some way during the Soviet era. Aliza Meisner says that now, with the banning of Memorial, her Russia is losing another focal point of remembrance and support.